we'll start out with something that's a little bit fun and quirky. This is one of my favorite, absolute favorite YouTube channels of all time. And I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but it is called Defunct Land. And okay, Defunct Land started out as kind of a geek out to defunct amusement parks.
Okay.
And has turned into like full blown high quality documentaries. Still about defunct Disney things. Okay. So the most recent video is one called Disney's Animatronics, A Living History.
Please tell me this is about them malfunctioning.
It is about all sorts of things. And I think it dives into the AI space where we're headed. So it's a very interesting history of technology in general.
Okay.
This is really high quality stuff. When you think of YouTube, not trying to put down YouTubers, but there's so much content on YouTube. Not all of it's quality, obviously, right?
No.
This is like top tier. Like this could be like a History Channel special type of a thing. And it's really well done, obviously. And it goes back in time to the early days of like even the Egyptians trying to make these things that mimic, humans or animals. And it scales all the way up through time to when Walt Disney himself starts getting interested in these animatronic type of things. And
did they reference our site Weekend at Bernie's in this thing?
No, but they do address some conspiracy theories about Walt Disney being frozen and things like that. But the engineering that is in this video is just absolutely amazing. And it covers such a wide range of history. So this is like pre-computing up to, even further back where there's not even electronics. A lot of these things are mechanical. They're pulleys and gears, and like it's just this big history of technology in general. And it's all revolving around this idea of like humanoid robots and animatronics and how Walt Disney was involved. Yeah, it's gonna come full circle on this thing. That's why I do highly recommend watching it. It is a two-parter. So the second part has not come out yet. And the first part is an hour and 40 minutes. And it takes you up to like the Hall of Presidents, Wheel of Progress, things like that. I can't imagine what's next for the video series. I'm not that up to speed on what current Disney is doing. So I'm excited to see what comes next.
I think it's everyone else that's working on the next evolution of this.
But if you're any kind of history buff, especially if you're a history buff that is a technical person or likes engineering, this is an absolutely just wonderful series to watch. And I highly recommend it. It is on YouTube under Defunct Land. Just hit subscribe, watch all their stuff. It's all fascinating. There's a lot of things in here that are software engineering related, whether they are direct or indirect. One of them being, this is a slightly off topic from the video I've got highlighted, but there was another one that has to do with cues or lines and how Disney tried to implement like Fast Pass and the bracelet and all these ways of controlling cues in the theme parks. If you're any sort of software engineer, like these are problems that we solve with software all the time, and not, humans in queues, but data in queues and things like that. So these things are so fascinating. Highly, highly recommend it. Check out Defunct Land.
Yeah, one of my favorite lines from The Simpsons is when they go to Wally Weasel's theme park, and their senior.
Over the years, it has been my good fortune and pleasure to report to you from the 7 continents and the seven seas.
Did you freeze,
And
John?
now,
Did I lose you?
if I can
I'm
be
just
heard
listening
okay.
over
to
the
video that
roar
you're
of
playing.
all
Oh, is
this
it playing
machinery
audio?
of
What's it supposed to
preparation,
be
It
playing
is.
audio?
I'd
Yes.
like to give you a
That's odd.
preview
I cannot hear
of
the
a
audio.
wonder
but
of
you
the
can.
modern world.
Okay, he's a dude from the 50s. Anyways.
I must, you know what? I have my tab muted. I didn't think that would
okay,
play if
never
I
mind.
didn't hear it, though.
It did.
So,
It did.
my mistake. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It wasn't really interesting other than, when the Simpsons go to Wally Weasel's and Bart stands in front of that animatronic display, obviously an homage to the Disney animatronics. They've done this more than once, by the way. And then
yeah, there's a lot of
Tiny
throws
Robot
to
is
Disney.
like, hey kid, I hear it's your birthday. How old are you? And he's like, well, that's great. You're the birthday boy or girl.
I think my favorite is when they imply that the lost children in Disney are the animatronics for the Small World ride. They're like, okay, you're lost, come over here, and they like put them to work in the Small World. I think that's my favorite.
Yeah, there is a subreddit dedicated to robots with failing batteries, and it's quite funny to watch. Watching these because you sell these toys that are animatronics as well that are running on dead batteries. Is like crying with laughter funny to see how bad they do. Yeah. So there's a subreddit you can check out for that. Anyway,
so going from Egyptians remote operating statues via pulley to the modern day DeepSeek AI.
Right.
This thing has been just dominating the news cycle for the last 2 weeks now. There's a lot to talk about here, a lot to unpack. Where do you want to start, John?
Well, I guess we should probably get people up to speed and then kind of talk a little bit about some of the latest news that's been surrounding DeepSeek. So DeepSeek was announced last week by a research team based out of China. They published a paper. They published all their source code up on GitHub. And what it is basically demonstrating how supposedly or reportedly they were able to build a model that outperformed some of the biggest, most popular models today at a fraction of the cost. And so it is interesting. So DeepSeek is the name for this. It's the number one app on the iOS store at the moment, and it is considered a strong alternative to solutions like ChatGPT, etc. Not without controversy. So a lot of people have
Of course.
Yes. So if you ask DeepSeek questions about, for example, Tiananmen Square or Grocery Man in front of Tank, things like that, it will start to output the results, and then it will immediately say, I am unable to process this request, or that is outside the scope of what it is I'm looking, or whatever. Anyways, so there's a little bit of censorship going on with DeepSeek, and
there's a lot more than that. So we'll dive deeper. No pun intended. I love it. So deeper into DeepSeek.
Right.
One of the things I think we can't deny or ignore is that it is living up to the processing power and reduced power consumption and cycles that it says it does. I think people are throwing stuff at this and seeing that it's efficient. Microsoft has taken it and put it on Azure. You can download and run this locally, so it's something that you can test yourself, and it's not like it's on a server somewhere and you can't see the model running and know what it's consuming as far as power consumption and all of that. And they're like pretending it's faster than it really is. It's fast. It does what it says it does. The model is efficient, and it's able to output what it says it's able to output. So I think that part of it's verified. I think where some of the gray area lies is on how it was produced, with what data was it produced, and the hardware that was used to produce it. So, and the amount of money. So all of these things to a developer don't matter. They really don't matter at the end of the day, right? To the person maybe implementing this and downloading it and running it locally, doesn't matter. To global economies that are hinging very dependently on the markets that revolve around this, that matters. So
Sure.
we saw Nvidia, stock dive
Tank.
for a bit. Then
Tank.
it
Tank
think the
today.
nose came back up. Did it tank
No,
again
it
today?
it went up. People bought the dip and then it tanked again today.
Okay, so it's in fluctuation. It's caused a rift in the market, and part of the reason it caused that rift is because the claim is that this engineering research group was able to produce DeepSeek v3 with a lot less hardware than OpenAI and some other competitors need to produce theirs.
Mhm.
Now, there's some gray area here because there are sanctions in place from the US government to China that say they're not allowed to purchase X amount of hardware, especially NVIDIA hardware, to do these sort of things. So if that is in play here, then one might deduce that they're deflating the number of GPUs being used, because if they reported the real number, then that might imply they broke sanctions. And then it also, if you're in a trade war, gives you a leg up on throwing some shade on these other companies. So there's articles being written about this. There's research being done by journalists and things. I'm just reiterating things I've read. These aren't necessarily my opinions. I'm just stating the things that are being said out there, right? I don't know if these are the things you're hearing too, John.
I am. So there's been a lot of rumors flying about, including ones from Elon Musk saying that, what we're seeing out of this is not the whole story, etc. So I think there's lots of speculation around it. It is interesting. I think that this game around models will largely play itself out. And ultimately, we'll have a great model story going forward, no matter who wins out. It's sort of like, it's now the model race, and maybe Moore's law is now being applied here. Who knows? Meaning, we'll get a doubling maybe we need a new Moore's law. Something that says a model will double its efficiency every whatever amount of time.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think this benefits primarily the people who are building products on top of this. So the Metas, the Googles, the Amazons, the Microsofts, etc. They're going to benefit because the amount of capex they're spending right now on AI is absolutely insane. And they are spending gobs and gobs of money. Now, if there's a solution out there that can make it cheaper, so much better for those companies. Obviously, NVIDIA is the one that everyone's speculating about right now, whether or not this is going to impact them, because their H100 chips obviously command a significant cost. So we'll see. I think ultimately this is going to play itself out. I think the race is on. Hallelujah, which is great. I think ultimately, though, what matters for us as developers are agents. That's really where the next sort of race is for. It's kind of like the apps of AI, basically. The microservices of AI is the agents space, and that's where I think you're going to see a lot of traction. So.
Yeah, you mentioned investments. That brings us to our next story, and again, all politics aside, this happens to be tied to politics because of where the money comes from. So I'm not taking either side of the political aisle on this whole idea. I'm just reporting some news. But
Right.
This is
Are you
the
displaying
U.S.
your screen, by the
government.
way?
I thought I was. Did it fall off? I
It's
must
just you
have.
and me.
I must have hit the wrong
This was our
button when I
commentary
closed.
segment. There you go.
I closed tabs and it closed the whole thing. So this one is about
Stargate, yes.
Stargate, which is, I guess it is trying to figure out what exactly it is. It's not like a law or bill or anything that's been passed.
No, it's the name for an initiative.
It's an initiative. There you go. That's a good word for it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a $500 billion, or it's $500 billion, $500 billion initiative.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And this involves OpenAI, SoftBank, which is Japan. This is a Japanese investment firm. I'm not familiar with MGX, Oracle, and if you scroll down, there's many more. There's like, this is the top, I guess, contributors or something to it. But there's Microsoft and a bunch of others involved in this as well. I think Microsoft threw a number out. It was like 86 billion or something like that. And it's just a lot, like a lot of players involved in this.
Yep.
And I think the goal of this is to try to make a big commitment to AI from the US perspective. And also a lot of this will go into healthcare from what I understand. So it's an infrastructure project. It's a healthcare project. It has to do with data center building, AI modeling, and research into things like cancer. And they're promising like mRNA vaccines that can tackle different types of cancer and whatnot. So that's what I get from it. It's a lot of money. And then right after this was announced, that whole DeepSeek thing started, which really threw markets into a tizzy. And then, now it has people questioning whether this amount of money is what it really requires to do what we need to do. It's a whole thing. It's been a long week, John. It's been a long week for AI.
I think a lot of this is necessary. I think, what we saw here was basically the equivalent of a ribbon cutting ceremony on the White House lawn.
Yeah.
Trump and others were on talking about. It was good to see Larry Ellison. I hadn't seen him for a long time. He looks good for whatever 80-year-old he is. He looks great. It was kind of interesting to see him come out and talk about this. I don't know why he's invested in this because he really doesn't need to be. So, but it was great to see this announcement. I think we're going to see more announcements like this. That's my gut feeling. I have no obviously insight on that, but I think that what we're seeing here is a realization that this is our space race. Essentially, the race is on.
Yep, took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah, and the race is on, and it's a good thing. And what it's going to do is it's going to bring a lot of jobs, I think, to the U.S. We're already seeing that. We're seeing the collapse of globalization already, and you're seeing a lot of that stuff coming onshore in the U.S. So you're going to see these huge server farms in Texas and whatnot, which with huge power requirements. You're already hearing stories about Google and Microsoft needing. They're firing up 3 Mile Island, for God's sakes. I mean, so this is where we're headed, and I think it's a good thing. I think it's going to push, all of us in the right direction around efficiency. I would say, though, that if you're a developer, my advice to you is, accept it, embrace it, don't resist it. It's coming. And then look at a higher level what's going to be something that you can build on top of. So educating yourself about this is going to be important, but also further to that is looking beyond just, I'm no longer a code monkey. I am now a prompt engineer, or I need to build on top of what this is. And so that's what I would suggest.
Data training, security analysis, all of that stuff is also a big part of all of this. Making sure that things aren't hallucinating or people aren't accessing data they're not supposed to access, or you're not, training these things to be unfair against certain groups of people. All that's going to play into this as well. And if this is going to be a U.S. like investment, I hope part of this goes to data infrastructure as well. Like, we've been promised this for years, and still, like, in rural areas, connecting to the internet is trash in the United States. So hopefully that gets tackled with this as well.
That's what we're doing here in Australia. We have the same problem, and Starlink is solving that problem. Recently, the local government here, the federal government here, announced a $3 billion investment in rural and regional links to try and mitigate the need for Starlink. But Starlink is the way I would look at, pushing that.
Yeah, we need something here. You could get Starlink. It's still not quite cost effective as a lot of other options.
You're
So-
talking to space though. I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah, but when you're living on a farm and you know, a lot of these rural communities are lower income, like
Mhm.
dropping several $100s a month to have internet access isn't exactly like on the budget for folks. So,
There are community initiatives around that to share connections, etc., that you can look into.
yeah, not sure I've seen
Anyways.
those here, but yeah. All right, moving on. Considerations for making a tree view component accessible.
I thought this was an interesting article from the folks over at GitHub. It obviously relates to our audience around Telerik, for example. This is all about how we take a tree view and obviously make it accessible. But the things to think about, and they go into, you know, some of the heuristics around using a tree view, what you might want to expose, ARIA attributes, and the like. I think it's interesting. Obviously, Telerik has this all covered for you. I mean, the answer to this is just use a Telerik tree view. That's the easy answer.
Yeah.
But what's interesting here is the breakdown of things to think about, you know, and specifically what ARIA attributes to use, etc., how you might build this out. They don't mention a skeleton for preloading. I thought that was surprising, you know, because that obviously gives a visual representation of something loading, etc. But they do mention the fact that you should indicate that you are loading tree nodes if you click on them, if they contain a high number of items, for example. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's an interesting article. I like the breakdown of controls like this. I think it's good. And I would encourage you, Ed, and your folks over at Telerik, that maybe you might want to publish an article like this. Like, here's how we built X, Y, and Z.
So I actually did one of those. I'll have to look it up and maybe throw it in the show for next week. It's a bit older. It's maybe 2 years ago I did this. So I went out to, let's see, where does this link go? Yeah, this isn't it. Maybe it is. Yeah, W3C, not their GitHub though, but on the W3C website, I went out there and I grabbed a demo that they have that shows best practices for a panel view component. And it shows like all of the ARIA roles in like a JavaScript based UI component, how to build it. It's on ARIA's website. They got a bunch of examples like that. So I took that and I wrote unit tests around building this component in Blazor. And what the unit test would do is it would go through and it would verify that all of your ARIA attributes are where they are supposed to be. They're marking the elements they're supposed to mark. That keyboard navigation operates as it's supposed to. So you could just run the unit test, and when all the unit tests pass, you could guarantee that this is going to be accessibility compliant. And I wrote the article about it. I've been to a couple of conferences and done presentations on it, and it's usually well received until the end. And folks usually are like, well, this is a lot of work. What should I do? And I'm like, just go buy our components. And they're like, oh, you just wanted to sell me something. I'm like, no, there's other options. You can hire.
Yes.
So you could hire an accessibility expert and have them as part of your team. And they're like, well, that sounds even more expensive. I'm like, it is. And then they're like, well, what's the cheap and easy way to do this? And I'm like, buy our components. And they're like, no, like, I don't want to learn all of this, but I also don't want to hire somebody and I don't want to buy components. I'm like, you have to solve the problem. You have to spend money somewhere.
Sure.
The cheapest way is to buy already made components that are tested for all of these requirements. Test them yourself, but you have to know what to test for. If you don't have guidelines like, I had, they just have some basic examples on the W3C. They don't have like every component you can imagine. Mm-hmm. It's just like a handful. There's like a dozen.
I'm amazed that developers. I'm amazed that developers who are making maybe 100K plus are balking at the price tag of a few $100 component. I mean, yeah, you can churn your own butter if you want, but you really don't want to. So just go to the grocery store and pick up a stick. What's the big deal here?
Usually these decisions aren't coming from the person that is buying it out of their own pockets, right? This isn't like you or I going, I need this thing for work. I'm going to go ahead and buy these components. I make $100,000 a year. This is only $1,000 a year. It's usually at the office decision level where it's like, I have to go to my boss and I have to ask for them to buy this. And I think that's where a lot of us get hung up, is either we don't like to ask for money, we don't know how to ask for money, because usually the kickback is from whoever the process owner or supervisor or whatever
All
you
right,
want to call
I
them
got it. I'm going to
is.
stop you right there. I'm
Yeah.
going to stop you right there. You know how conferences put up that web page, Convince My Boss?
Yeah.
Every component vendor, including you, Ed, and Telerik, and Progress, should put up a page, Convince My Boss to buy component X. And it spits out this page, and it shows that by the numbers, why you should buy our component library. Convince My
Yeah.
Boss. So there you go.
Those arguments can be made. The problem is when you try to put dollar values on them and publish them on our website, then the lawyers come in and they're like, you can't say this does X for this
make
amount
it
of
up.
money.
Let's
So
just make it up. Let's assume $1,000, and then put you make them open text boxes, so you're not putting anything in there. You say, tell me your salary, tell how you want to spend on the component, and then you do the math, and you say this is worth X number of minutes,
Yeah.
and it's easy.
Yeah, I agree. These decisions usually, again, don't come from the developer, and they don't want to invest the time or do the legwork on proving out the return on investment here. So yeah, it takes a lot to
just
make.
Create a page that does. Use Kendo UI. You can create a page that does all this with graphs and everything. It'd be awesome.
We should do that, John. But this is a great article. Like I said, I've done something similar, and it's a really interesting exercise to go through. It gets you in a different mindset when you're building UI components, to think about all of the different ways people interact with these things, and the way that you interact with something is different than the way somebody else does, and you have to try to think of all of these things when you're building this stuff out.
Yep.
Semaphore is going open source in 30 days.
Yes. Pretty big news. Yeah. So Semaphore is pretty well known. It's a widely used CI tool. It touts itself also as a delivery platform. They've announced their transition to open source, and so basically they're looking to involve the community, open sourcing their core technology and making it available under the Apache 2, which is awesome. This will allow, obviously, the open source community to build on top of Semaphore, which is great. So we have a new competitor in the space. It's not just, Jenkins, etc. It's, other solutions now as well going forward. So there you go.
Okay. I've never heard of this Semaphore before. Okay. So when I hear Semaphore, I think of AI, and that's because I live in the walls of Progress.
Okay.
We have a product also called Semaphore.
Yeah. Well, Semaphore is like, that gate that you have in the context of computer science with algorithms, and especially used for like queues and such. So,
but this is actually a really cool product that I don't get to talk about very often. This is actually a Semantic AI tool, so it's like for mapping different contexts around data. So you have your data in a data platform, and then this allows you to tag and give what do they call those things? The naming for this stuff escapes me, but it's basically tagging and giving context to those tags, and it builds out an easier model for your AI.
You mean like a taxonomy?
Yeah, taxonomy is one. There's another onomy that I'm missing, and I'm not joking. Like there's
Tautology,
two of them.
Taxonomy.
I don't know.
An analog. I don't know. Trying.
But there's these classifications. We'll just use that. There's classifications that you wrap around your data, and it gives the AI more context to make decisions against. So it's actually a really cool tool that we have that integrates with our data platform and other data platforms. So that's something cool we should talk about sometime.
Nice.
All right, John. A truth about leadership from writing code to running a company. What are we talking about here?
So this is a podcast called Founder and Friends. This is from the founder and CEO of Raygun, John Daniel Trask, and he lives in New Zealand. And he interviewed our CEO and founder, Paul Stovall of Octopus Deploy, talking about leadership. And there's a follow-up blog post that John put out about this as well. So you're looking for a good interview around someone who has done some amazing things with a startup, Paul. You could definitely check that out.
Yeah, these are some smart guys here. Actually follow online as well. Really passionate
right
about.
So Paul's in our office in Brisbane right there. So
nice. Yeah, I can see the tentacle in the background. Yes. That's pretty cool. Yeah, and
that thing did not look like that when we first rented it. That office looked like it looked like they were testing missiles there when we first rented that place out. It was during COVID and all that sort of stuff. We were checking out the office and it was all gutted and everything. It looks beautiful now, but that tentacle was an addition for sure.
Yeah, and then John Daniel is very focused on Raygun, and
yes,
I mean if you want to see somebody that is passionate about their product, like he is the guy. Like he is just deep into the Raygun, like all parts of it.
The Raygun.
Yeah,
I am into the Google.
No, he's all over that thing, and it's he's grew the company up. Like you see, people come and go from different companies, and they pretend to be passionate about it and stuff, but that's not the case here. Like he is all in on Raygun, so it's nice to see that. He's interesting fellow to follow on the Twitters and whatnot because of it. All right. I couldn't remember if I covered this one or not before, so I'm going to throw it out there again if I did. But feature flags in A/B testing are a really handy tool, especially if you're building out new features. You want to test them to smaller groups before you throw it out to every user that's out there. What was the big debacle we had last year where they deployed software and took down all the Microsoft stack stuff? How quickly we forget these things.
Are you talking about SolarWinds?
Yeah, no, not SolarWinds. That was a hack. There was the other one where they went to push an update and there was a null exception behind the scenes and it crashed
it was the AV agent.
Anyhow, if you want to roll out changes incrementally, test things to different sets of users, feature flags are a great way to do that, so you don't blow up all of the customers or users at one time. You can dole this out to a test group, an inner ring of testers, so on and so forth. Do A/B testing. And with .NET, you could do that with the Microsoft Feature Management Library. I wasn't actually aware this was a built-in .NET library. This is something you could grab, and you can control your feature flags through the Microsoft Feature Management package, and then you can plug that into your dependency injection pipeline, create a configuration for it, and then you can even use data annotations and things to turn certain parts of your APIs on and off. And I think that's really handy. It's pretty simple. It's in a nice short sweet blog post here on Millen's website, his blog. I featured it a few times here. He's a great blogger and has a lot of good content, so you probably see it again.
Yeah, so feature flags or feature toggles, very popular in our industry. LaunchDarkly is a big proponent of them, obviously. That's their solution. These are easy to configure through appsettings.json, turn them on and off. I think the biggest problem you have with feature flags, at least we use them ourselves, the biggest problem we have is just the clutter. It's using the floor as your laundry basket, basically, so you have to clean up all the unused flags. You have to keep track of them. That's why you use a solution, for example, like LaunchDarkly, for example. But they're great. They're great for doing production testing. They're awesome.
Yeah.
And then there's a way to express them through a specification called Open Feature as well.
Yeah, this is definitely something you don't want to roll your own, right up there with security and stuff like that.
Not that hard.
Don't
like
roll your own
Boolean.
though. It's a solved
On, off.
problem. Like go out there, grab one of these things that's for the
Okay.
framework you're working in, and build with it. Don't reinvent the wheel. You know, I'm curious because a good friend of mine is doing a live stream series on this, where he's building a content management system. I'm
Okay.
wondering how many developers have not built a content management system.
Oh, it's always the to-do list, isn't it? That's
Yeah,
what
you
always-
like go to the.
yeah.
You're like, I built this to-do list. I could totally do a content management system. It's a to-do list that renders HTML
Oh, it could be
from
so
a
hard.
database.
I mean, it's Dash blog, Tiny CMS. What else is there, right? So just
I have
on-offs.
successfully built a home-rolled content management system for the company I worked at before
Yeah.
Progress, and implemented it, and it ran it for like 5 years. Like it ran our company's blogs and websites internally for like 5 years. So it can be done. But anyway,
Yeah. No, I think roll your own. There are many classic stories. I think many of them we've discussed at events like Fail Camp, where people have rolled their own email distribution systems, their own CMSs. What else have I done? Your own CMS. Sometimes you think about making your own programming language.
I
Certainly
know
your own
something.
your own distro of Linux.
I know something you've never done. Never ever done. Okay, I can promise you've never done this.
Used AI or AR. Sorry.
This is an amazing post I picked up on Twitter. I still don't like calling it X, Twitter, and it's 10% of international web traffic is protected by a wall of lava lamps in San Francisco, which converts the changes in randomness of the bubbles into computer code. Do you know what this is for?
This is for introducing entropy into a system for randomness. It's a brilliant system. I think Cloudflare did this, if not, if I'm mistaken. Okay.
This is Cloudflare's office.
Yeah.
And it sits in public view, and like they say that the people that are entering the office and walking past it and things change the temperature in the room and introduce even more entropy into the system. So they like keeping it in the lobby.
Yes.
Yeah. So they they put it right in the lobby, and I thought this was just fascinating. Like it shows like how this all works. Wall of lava lamps. They have a camera. It's in this thing. It's like all documented out here. It's cool. And these are literally providing random numbers for security token.
Their seed generation. Yeah, that's very common. I mean, that's the thing that people get tripped up on is when they start reading about seed values. They're like, well, how do you randomize the seed value? It's like, well, most people base it on the clock, etc., and plus some other things. And people start freaking out. They're like, well, this isn't random enough. I'm like, so Cloudflare's like, all right, here's a lava lamp.
Some of the replies in this thread are absolutely hilarious too. They're like, what if there's an earthquake? And like the replies to that were like, more entropy. Like it's very silly. I was trying to remember if there were more. There's a Wikipedia page link there as well, but there were other examples given in here as well. So it was pretty cool. I love the fact that like all of these things exist and they're part of our tech stacks. So there's some fun stuff out there.
Well, you may remember, Ed, we used to have a device wall at Telerik / whatever it was called back in the day, and I remember I took videos of folks on the team playing with that, and we were debating whether or not we could, whenever we would load a new app up using Icenium or one of those tools. This is way back when I was at Telerik. We noticed that the load times for different devices differed, and it was almost like a lava wall. It was totally random when they loaded.
Yeah.
So interesting stuff.
And then finally, I thought this was pretty cool. Gaussian splats are kind of they're part AI technology, part mathematical visualization, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. They're really cool if you haven't seen them before. What happens is you take a photo or photos of a scene, and then these algorithms figure out what that scene looks like from different points of view. Mm-hmm. And then you could create a 3D experience based on those points of view. So this is a really cool demo that somebody did in Three.js, which is just a web-based web GPU rendering framework. And it's simulating a photo frame. and you could take your device and move your
It's got a vanishing
device.
point. It's got a vanishing point algorithm built in. I can tell. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's doing it through Gaussian splatting, so
Mhm.
it looks fully 3D, and it's doing it off of like a minimal amount of data. And if you're not impressed by this demo, like you should check out the ones that Meta is doing, where they've got complete 3D environments that you can walk through and analyze from like literally any perspective in your, and it creates like a virtual environment that you can walk around, and it's all based off of photography. Like there's no spatial mapping that was
So the
done.
photo itself is not. It's just a photo. It's a static image. It's not doing ray
Mhm.
tracing or anything like that. Is
Nope.
that right?
No,
Okay.
this is just running an algorithm that creates like
It's creating a vanishing point, basically. So
yeah, it kind of analyzes the photo. I'm not an expert on it, but it extrapolates the data and makes more perspectives of it. So it's kind of generating these images,
Mhm.
but they're not images. They're vectors. So it's more of a vector-based
well, that's what a
thing than it
vanishing
is
point
a,
is, right? So you have vanishing point is something
rasterization.
that collapses. Yeah, vanishing point is something that collapses into the middle to give it perspective, basically. So they're just applying that algorithm, looks like, to that, and then
Yeah.
using the Gaussian splat basically to give it some sort of context.
Yeah, the photo frame is a pretty cool UI though. I like it. You can imagine like putting the VR headset on and like plopping a couple of these on the walls and putting photos
Right.
in them and having them get depth, even though they never had depth before. I
Mhm.
think that's a really cool use case. So it's
Also
neat.
helps
It's
that
built in
the
JavaScript of all
right. The
things.
photo is the photo they chose is, I think, if you just move the photo, or sorry, not you, but if you just hover, yeah, the photo itself is kind of well oriented towards this sort of demo. I
Mhm.
think what would be interesting is if they had a portrait photo to see if that worked as well. Like of a face or a person. I'd be interested to see that, see how well it works.
I'm trying to
But
remember
you've got AI tools that can do this now. AI tools will do a trace of 2D objects and generate 3D sort of approximations as well that you can move around and
yeah,
such.
this is Meta's demo of it.
Yeah,
So you put on the VR headset and then you can physically walk around the space.
sure.
Now, I think,
Sure.
Obviously there's going to be more than a single photograph involved in something this big, but they didn't do.
You'd be surprised, dude. I've been looking at a lot of AI tools. You'd be surprised as to what they can do now. Like, there's a lot. Obviously, there's a lot of interpolation going on, and
Mhm.
a little bit of artifacts will be introduced, but it does a reasonably good job. I
Yeah,
don't think it needs more than one photo. I think it can spackle up the cracks, if you will, of what's missing in some ways. Now you'll
yeah,
see some weirdness. You will see some weirdness at times. So.
I'll have to read a little bit more on their version of it and see exactly either the resolution of the photo they took is really high and or there are multiple photos involved. But what they didn't do is like LiDAR scan the room to make there's no 3D scanning involved here. It's just a photograph.
What you'll typically see, I've done an AI demo with this, and what you'll typically see is you'll see the shadow stay static, and you're like, the shadow's not moving. Or you'll see something will look completely off. It's easier with nondescript items like this, like a wood shop. If you have people involved, you start to see really weird things like 6 fingers, for example. You don't see that much anymore, but you start to see things like that.
Yeah, this one looks like they may have some kind of shadow.
See how the shadow's barely moving there? See how it's static? That's sort of the artifacts, because it's not ray tracing properly, and you're not seeing
it's not doing any kind of real-time shadowing. Although there are some, well, I guess it doesn't move where you'd expect it to. It does at some point, and that's probably where it's stitched together multiple photos. Like I said, I think there are multiple photos involved in this one, because the shadows do change depending on point of view. But like you said, they're not gradual. They kind of snap a little bit. And you could also dive deeper into some of the items here, which is pretty neat. So that one's out there. It's got like one with a car in a garage that's really good. So the technology is just kind of mind bending.
My uncanny valley detector is firing.
Oh, it definitely does on those.
Yeah.
They're not going to be like perfect renderings that you would
No.
get from like a video game or something
They're
like
getting
that.
good though, dude. They're getting so
They're
good.
getting
I,
really
I
good.
I went deep on this last night. Actually, I was looking at AI tools for something I was working on, and it's crazy how good they are. I was looking at a bunch of solutions that are out there right now, and there's a solution called Kling that I hadn't heard of before. You've heard of Midjourney and stuff, but Kling is like amazing. I was looking at that. I've been using 11 Labs a little bit recently for voice generation.
Mhm.
In video is a really good one as well that I've seen. It's crazy how good these tools are now.
Yeah, I would actually like um the AI generated avatar thing to work,
It
where
does. You can see you can generate avatars of yourself pretty easily now.
of yourself.
Yes.
That's one that I haven't seen work well yet. We might have to
It
talk off
works
air.
great. I saw a video of it last night. I saw a guy do a demo of it. It looks uncannily good.
What I think that is really useful for, and I don't say, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think for quite some time it's still going to be easy to tell what's real, what's fake. Like I've been in like doctors' offices and like they'll have a talking head on the screen. I'm like, that's AI generated. Like that uncanny valley sense kicks in, like you said, and you're like, like I know it looks real, but the mannerisms are just not there. Even if they're really good, like voice actor or whatever, the mannerisms are just gone. Like you could tell it's a
I'm
robot.
laughing.
There's nothing
I'm
behind the
laughing.
eyes.
I'm laughing a little bit here because we've come full circle. We started off with the animatronics documentary, and now we're moving
Yeah.
into replicating ourselves. Hey, kid, I hear it's your birthday. Ha 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 ha. You know.
But what I personally would like it for, and I think it'd be a really strong case for using it, is if you are recording yourself doing video, like many of us in our field do,
Sure.
like we're doing right now. If I have an edit point, stitching together an edit point right now is painful. And if, say, I'm looking this way and then I cut the video, in the start of the next video, I'm looking that way, that cut point is really noticeable to the person because there's a frame where your head just like flips to the other direction and you get that like max headroom effect. If I could just animate the transition points between my cuts, that would be a game changer.
If you use Adobe Premiere, there's an effect called morph that can get you halfway there. It's not perfect, but it does do a morph. So.
Yeah. If I could get it to successfully like fool the end user,
we're almost there.
Almost there.
Almost there.
That would save, because if you want to take a video, so you're doing a training video, and you want to go without cuts, and you're doing like a 10-minute stint, and you make one mistake in the middle, you have to cut the whole thing again. Like you cannot splice that and have it.
I don't think we're going to record videos anymore. I think we're going to record ourselves and throw everything up into a tool like Kling and then generate a script and it will come out perfect. I think that's what's going to happen.
We shall see. But
it's already happening, dude. It's happening now.
I know it is, but we'll see if it sticks. Like, I don't know. There'll always be the hipster with the typewriter that's like, this feels better.
Oh, yeah. Well, the downside of those avatars is they don't really seem human. They are coming back to the animatronics thing. It's really hard. They're very flat. They look great. They look just like you, and they can read a script and they have all the inflections and stuff, but they come across a little bit flat. I mean, they don't express emotion that well.
Yeah. And then they do like the kind of like the waiting pose where they're kind of like, and then you ask a question like, oh yeah, I can respond to that. They come off all fake. But anyhow, that's all we've got for today. I'm going to try to stream again tomorrow on the AI show. We did a full stack Friday last week where I showed you how to spin up DeepSeek, and literally we could have done a 5-minute video on that and just been done, but I tried to take it further and my tools wanted to fight with me, so it lasted like an hour and a half. But getting DeepSeek or any local AI model running on your device is so stupid easy anymore. Literally with Microsoft .NET Aspire, You could do it like 3 lines or 4 lines of code. And you just like open a new Spire app, say like add Olama, give me this model, run the web interface, go. And it just spins it up and downloads it all by itself and gives you a website to play with. It's just so stupid easy. And it's fun. All right. And check out John's stuff at Octopus Deploy and swing by Telerik.com if you get a chance. And we'll see you next week, folks. Thanks for joining us.